Chapter 1 Consolidation. Being a pirate of a fast, heavily gunned fighting craft has its advantages. However, as Captain Avery sat at his controls of his prized Lion S-Class, watching the steam lift from his freshly brewed coffee from the only system in the Milky Way galaxy that it was grown in, 1°4774, he wondered just how it was possible to find this elusive system. It's true, many people had tried and failed to penetrate the coffee's company layers of secrecy. The system did not appear on any star chart of any type, nor did it appear on the computerized version you could buy for several hundred federal francs at any reputable space station or starport. No. This was one mystery that had kept it secret for hundreds of years. Earth did not exist as we know it at this time. Dinosaurs still roamed the planet, and the Council of Intelligence had not begun its program of extinction and reassignment to human habitation. Avery stared at his charts, trying to work out just where a star system could be located that was not marked. Enough space in space to have a fully operational system without it affecting any other. There were gaps, he thought, as he tested his hot black elixir. Nevertheless, to get these spots would require months of travelling from accessible star systems via the standard hyperspace routes. He stared at the printed image of Anne Bonny on the wall, his new wife, which he had sent him from their home system of Deso. Avery was a gambling man and knew that to anything there was a mathematical solution. He swung around in his seat to face the square table he used to have his meals on, and then unfolded the old-style map that he kept on board in case of an electrical or computer malfunction that would render his navigation system as much use as a fluorescent hunting jacket. His finger began to wander over the surface of the shiny printed map. It was old. He had had it with his past, and his father gave it to him when he was just 11. Now it was the only link he had to his past and his father. That was how he wanted it, and the map stayed. Avery manually writing in new discoveries as they appeared in his updated computerized system. Many gaps had been filled in now with new planetary systems, and Avery knew that most of the unknown zones were now mapped. There were, however, plenty of possibilities, he thought, as his finger tapped on a small but large enough gap. He quickly swung his seat around again to the controls and tapped in the coordinates. "Damn!" he said aloud, as he realised that he had neglected to update a newly found star system, Alpha Magna, onto his chart. There it was, a single star encircled by 5 planets, with one in the living zone. However, it had been marked with the tag unexplored. "So many planets to see, so little time," said Avery, going off on one of his tangents. What was needed was a better plan, he thought, as he tried another gap. This time there was nothing there. "There's more than one way to skin a minnock," he thought, as he sat back and put his brain into action. A minnock is a large, fur-covered, 2-legged creature that lives on the white planet of Minos in the Etheries system. What if he could get hold of some coffee plant seeds and plant them to grow his own coffee somewhere like this unexplored planet? Maybe they would grow, maybe they wouldn't. How would he get hold of seeds or berries when the coffee was roasted in the 1°4774 system? No wonder nobody had been able to take on the coffee company's monopoly. I could spend the rest of my life trying to find this system and still be none the wiser. Why did it bother him? He did not know. Avery finished his coffee and looked bitterly at the grains left in the bottom, and suddenly had an idea. That's it! He folded up the map carefully and asked the computer to show him all the unexplored systems with a planet in the living zone. The system screen flickered as if it wasn't too happy to have such a complicated search, and then flickered back with a list. 9 in all, with 11 planets in total. What are the chances? What are the chances that one of these planets, which is, in theory, inhabitable, there are coffee plants growing wild? Slim, he concluded. A 1 in 10 chance, meaning that one of these planets, in theory, should have coffee growing, just as a matter of course. He set the coordinates for his first stop, Alpha Magna, and hit hyperspace. The adventure had just begun. Or so he thought. Nothing happened. He tried again. Nothing. I knew I should have got this thing serviced the first time I was in a space station. Avery's ship sat on the outskirts of his home system of Bethany. He had been back home for the first time in years to visit his father. There was no love lost between them, but Avery felt warmth and understanding of his father's actions that he had not experienced before, and felt his anger towards him subside. Avery knew that he was taking a risk sending out a distress message. But what choice did he have? He was out of range for contact of the planet BC. So he screwed his face up and delivered the following message. This is Captain Avery of the Lion Starfighter. I have a hyperspace malfunction and require assistance. Anyone in the vicinity, please reply. There was a long silence, with only static noise across the waves. Avery's suspicious mind began to wander, as if some unseen force had prevented him from making his jump. He was aware of the laws of mathematics and understood the Council of Intelligence were everywhere and had control of all systems and powers beyond most intelligent minds' comprehension. It could be a simple malfunction, but Avery knew that, and always kept an eye on the unseen and the unknown. Avery sent his message again, but this time he added a reward. This is Captain Avery of the Lion Starfighter, the vicinity of BC. I have a hyperspace malfunction and require help. I offer a reward of 10,000 federal francs for assistance in this matter. Captain Charles Vane was passing through the Bethany system in his newly acquired bloodhound when he heard Avery's first message of distress. He promptly ignored it, as there was nothing in it for him, and a simple thanks was not worth anything to anyone. However, the mention of 10,000 federal francs changed his attitude somewhat, and he decided to turn back after all. Well, money is money, and I could do with some start-up funds, he said to the now dead former captain sat next to him at his controls. I'll have to get rid of you first, my old friend, before I link up with this Captain Avery, he said, putting the dead man's back. Vane set the controls to Avery's location and sent a brief message. Captain Vane, on his way to assist. He lifted the dead captain up out of the control room and dragged him to the escape pod and set him down inside. Let's see now. If I want to send you off to the spaceport below, then the authorities will assume that you died en route. That shouldn't cover my back until I sell this craft to someone unsuspecting no-hooper. Vane pressed the delayed launch button, which gave him just enough time to step back, closing the small door behind him. He waved his former boss off on his final journey down to the surface of BC and the spaceport Hummingbird. Avery heard the message come back across space. "Captain Vane on his way to assist." Thank my lucky stars, I thought. I was going to be stuck here for weeks. He turned to his observation equipment and could see a large speck coming towards him and a small speck heading towards the surface of BC. That's odd. Why didn't they answer? He analysed the small speck and ran the identification scan. Escape pod from Bloodhound located 10 degrees 569-5, came the response. Oh, I don't like the look of this. He fumbled in his overhead locker and pulled out an old trusty laser gun and checked the power on it. It was full. Okay, whoever you are, you seem to be up to something, and I'm not prepared to talk until I have you where I want you. Avery. Avery. Where have I heard that name before? Pondered Vane, as you could see the Lion S-Class come into view. Vane? Surely not Charles Vane. Vane steered his Bloodhound alongside Avery's ship and activated the connection corridor that his would couple the ships and allow access between them. Avery stood on the other side awaiting his adversary's entrance behind the column of the door when Vane entered. Avery wasted no time in pressing the gun's barrel hard against Avery's reconstructed skull. Vane's face turned into a smile, and he began to laugh in an uncontrollable manner. Hey, Avery, my old wingman, is this how you greet an old friend? Friend? You left me for dead on the far side of the galaxy. I could have died thanks to you. Well, you didn't, did you? You're still here, obviously. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't be here for a moment long, retorted Avery. Ah, come on, Avery. It was every man for himself. How was I to know that your engines were not up to outrunning drone ships? For council's sake, you were an amateur in those days. I couldn't hold your hand. This game is for real players. You know that. Vane always had a way with words, which allowed him to wriggle out of a tight situation. Come on, Avery. Let's talk about this over a drink. You can't even make it back to the surface with the hyperspace malfunction. We all know all drives down. You're a sitting target up here. Not if I blow your sick mind out of your head, Vane. True. You could take my ship. But you will become as tainted as I am, as I stole it from its former owner. So that's what you did. With the owner gone, sent him on his way down to the BC. Dead, I presume. Dead men tell no tale, Avery. You know that. What the? You have killed more people than I've had casino wins, Vane. Come on, Avery. What have you got to drink? I can't pretend that I've gone down the right road, but hey, I've been given a second chance. I've, well, you could say, been born again. Have you gone all religious, Vane? Seen the error of your ways? Fat chance, Avery, retorted Vane. All I can offer you, Vane, is some coffee. Well, I suppose that's better than nothing. Avery lifted the laser gun from Vane's head and put it back in the overhead locker. Vane inspected the ship and couldn't help expressing his admiration for the high specification of the craft. Nice workmanship, he said, rubbing his hand over the soft plush interior finish. Yes, Vane, I've made a few good deals. Now, do you like your coffee black? Like me? Avery secretly admired Vane's cutthroat mentality. He was a no-compromising sort who could turn at the flick of a comment that he found disagreeable. Avery was far too calculating in his approach. The two men sat in mutual admiration of each other, sipping on the thing that they both desired. You know, Avery, Vane eventually said, I got locked up for life because of this stuff. What do you mean? Come on, you must have wondered, where it is. It crossed my mind. I've died for that dream, Avery. What do you mean? I died in goal. They threw away the key, then some experiment brought me back. What experiment? Who brought you back? I don't know. Some crazy lab in the Empire. I find my way out of there, and here I am. That doesn't make any sense. Did you say the Empire? Asked a surprised Avery. Yes, the Empire. When was this? Last couple of double strikes in the Empire's terms. But how? Avery couldn't quite take this information in. How could the Empire have done this without the machine? Unless they had cloned it. Avery quickly changed the subject back to the coffee. So how strongly do you feel about the coffee company's monopoly, Vane? I've always tried to bust something that was totalitarian, Avery. Unfortunately, I do. Maybe that was it, Avery thought. I wouldn't know where to start to look for their systems out there in the infinity of space. Do you know, Avery? Avery sensed that Vane was testing his information that he was listening to a bit intently. So Avery said the first thing that came into his head. Like I said, I've never given it too much thought. You know something, don't you, Avery? I don't follow you, Vane. I'll help you get this thing up and running if you let me in on it. It will go no further than this. You have my word. That is not worth much to me, laughed Avery. I'm not the same man I used to be, Avery. Gaul has changed all that. You're leaving me with no choice, Vane. You get this ship going and I will let you in on my plan. But it will mean you will have to do half the work. You've got a deal, Avery, said Vane, spitting on the palm of his hand and squeezing Avery's as he shook it rapidly, as was the custom amongst pirates. You get me powered up via your drive system and we can work out the details then. No, Avery, I'm no fool. I boost your systems and you'll be out of here before I can say coffee. All right, Vane. Let's have another coffee and I'll take you through the plan. Avery set his browser again and continued by spreading his old map on the table. You see this, Vane? Yes, I used to have one of those hanging around the wall my children's home when I was a boy. Happy days. Fighting every day and stealing from the local stores. I used to look at it for hours and wonder what it would be like to travel all across this galaxy. We have more in common than I realised, Vane, said Avery, as he poured out his freshly brewed coffee, then passed one to Vane across the table. My coffee, I haven't tasted it better anywhere in the galaxy, said a proud Avery. What's the plan then, Avery? Said Vane, ruining the moment for Avery. As you can see, Vane, there are a lot of gaps across this map where you might imagine that there would be systems that haven't yet been mapped or have been deliberately left off. Like 1°4774, for instance, stated Vane. Correct. So what is your point, Avery? Could you predict in which sector this system would arise? Asked Avery. No. That would take several lifetimes to compute the information required to come to a logical conclusion. So the logic follows that you need to narrow down the search. Agreed, said Vane, sipping his coffee. You know, he continued, that's the reason that it has the effect that it does. It's because the beans are charged with the caffeine drug that makes you want to eat more. In other words, the plant is tricking you to eat them, so it can take advantage of your natural dung, so it can expand its territory. Yes, I suppose there is a kind of instinct to consume more if you were an animal, eating various fruits and plants, said Avery, surprised at the philosophical insight from Vane. Anyway, Avery, how did you narrow down the search area? Well, you know that to perform the function, mankind, the creatures expand their range. It must be with living, breathing entities. Well, I suppose so. Then they must be living in the area known as the living zone. I see. So you can imagine that there are various systems out there which have yet to be explored that have plants that are in the living zone. I see where you're going with this. So there are 11 planets that fit into the living zone that haven't been explored. Vane had completed the charge to Avery's ship, which required him to park his belly to belly with Avery's and connect an energy line to the S-class power plant. What now, Avery? I've done my part in helping you. Now tell me where we're off to first. All right. I don't want either of us to find anything without the other one being there, to see it with their own eyes. Why don't you trust me not to double-cross you, Avery? There was a long silence on the line, and then Avery said abruptly, No. Oh, I can't blame you. I wouldn't trust me either. But you have my word that I am as eager as you to find coffee plants, so let's make this a joint venture. Yes, fine by me. I don't want to be stuck in some uninhabited rock without any form of assistance, so the usual rules of piracy apply here. A 50-50 share in the profits, if there is any to be had, plus start-up funds 50-50 apply. OK, you still owe me 10,000 federal francs, Avery. True, I'll match you your 10,000 francs, and we can start our joint venture from an even keel. Agreed, said Vane. The men would have shaken on this in the usual way, but they knew they had struck enough deals in their time to make this unnecessary. At least in this case, anyway. Although Vane was at best a total rogue, he was once under the control of a practical coder. Perfectly affable, but once out of his fraternity, he was as ruthless to strangers and a hungry creofax, which is a bear-like creature with a taste for human flesh that has been hibernating for the summer on months of the planet Tripoli in the Griopi system. Avery had seen Vane kill men with his own hands, a practice frowned upon, even by pirates. But these men were never pirates. Usually captains of ships he wanted more than was offered from, or more, rarely drunk pilots who thought that, as Vane was only 5'6" short for a pirate, that he would make a good person to take out their anger on, which of course was the last mistake they would make in their lives. Where to first? Asked Vane, safe in the knowledge that he belonged back in the world again, and the world he understood, and the only world that understood him, in which he could use violent tendencies to his advantage. Alpha Magna, said Avery knowingly. Where's that? When did the former captain, update his galaxy mapping system? I don't know, I didn't ask him. Wait, I'll check. Vane played around with the former captain's computer system checker, looking at inventory lists for purchases. It looks like he hasn't bothered updating since this ship was bought from you. I'll run this by your system if that's all right, Avery. I'll have to go back to my ship and check for comparison. Vane got up and made his way back to his ship. Yeah, fine, I'll send it over. Vane's screen flashed and a star began to, as if by magic, popped up on Vane's antiquated map. Damn fool! Why didn't he bother to update this? No need, probably, Vane, said Avery's automated male voice, as was standard with all voice messages, which were digitised to a single, understandable, audible voice. that everyone could understand from all habitable systems in the galaxy. Okay, Avery, I see it. You hyperspace first, so I don't have you behind me. That way we can test that your hyperspace drive is up and running again. I still need to get this thing serviced, but I'm sure it can wait till the expedition is finished. Yeah, don't worry about yourself too much. I'll just boost you again, said Vane. Okay, setting coordinates for the Alpha Magna system. See you on the other side, Vane. In a flash of electrical energy, Avery was gone. Just an orb of pulsating blue and white strobing light indicated his departure point. Vane's charge had done the trick. Avery was back in business. Vane waited before he'd hyperspaced. He didn't want to seem over-keen, and he certainly was not a follower. He'd spent his time in Goa'uld wisely, reading the entire library collection, and had just recently started to remember all that he had absorbed. Vane wanted another go in life, and viewed Avery as a role model, someone to emulate. But he couldn't let him know that. Whilst Avery was patching over the updates to his system, he had used his computer knowledge, which he had learnt by reading endless books on the subject, to retrieve Avery's personal music files. This way he thought he would begin to think like them. This was the theory he had read by the eminent psychologist Emmett Brown, psychologist to the great and the good. He downloaded the file, and as it was sitting there, he opened it and began to listen to the first track, Galactic Times. Interesting taste, Avery. Not what I was expecting at all. I had you down as listening to something a little bit heavier, more, let's say, violent than this. Well, I suppose it's a good place to start. I need to mellow out a bit, that's for sure. Vane had a habit of talking to people when they were not around, or even worse, dead. He liked the one-way conversation. It gave him total control over a situation, which he could then project into a real-life scenario with an individual. Okay, Avery, I've kept you waiting long enough. He set the controls of the Bloodhound for hyperspace jump to Alpha Magna and hit the hyperspace button. And within a few seconds he saw a bright blue and white light. Then his newly formed skull was violently bashed against the back of the captain's chair as he was flung into a tunnel-type formation. And there was Alpha Magna, not too far away from Avery's ship, which was scanning the system for other ships, but also looking out for Vane to arrive. What took you so long, Vane? Asked the disgruntled Avery, turning off his sensors, safe in the knowledge that they were the only two craft in this system. They may be the craft who invented the system. The fact that the system had been discovered did not mean that anyone was here. It was more likely that it had been spotted from a neighbouring system, plotted, calculated for systems configuration, filed and most likely forgotten, until someone needed more living space, ran out of minerals, or wanted to start a new tourist destination for the adventurous traveller. Until that time, Avery and Vane had the place to themselves. They could set themselves up as rulers of the system, start a new power in the galaxy if they so pleased. But discovering Coffea was enough for them now, as it seemed to pose more of a challenge than anything that had gone before them both. Are you looking at your chart, Vane? Yes, I see the fourth planet from the sun or star, whatever you want to call it. It's the one that is referred to as in the living zone. Correct. I've got the same stats. When do you want to start looking? What sort of place would grow such plants? Questioned Vane. It's possible to grow these plants in many different places, but I suggest we go for the warm parts, but not too hot. Somewhere with an average humidity, I think, replied Avery. Well, it appears in the middle of the band of the planet. Let's name it AM-4. It's about right, said Vane, with a little triumph. OK, let's head towards it, said Avery excitedly. As they swung around, they could both see through their glass screens a beautiful sight. The newly named AM-4 was ice-covered at its poles, with a thin tropical band of greenness in the middle section of land. Large seas divided odd ships of land, with the planet having darker green, more forested north and south portions, until it went into tundra bands. The Empire is very much like the Coffea plant, said Vane as he poked a stick into the fire that they had made in a clearing of the plateau. They had spent the long AM4 day exploring with no success. Avery twisted the meat over on an improvised spit that they had constructed. The animal they had not seen before, but it smelt like most woodland and jungle ground-dwelling animals, so they knew they could eat it. This animal, what shall we call it? Said Avery, trying to avoid the weird analogy that Vane had come up with. He had seen Vane start odd conversations with people prior to bullying them, so he felt uncomfortable. I don't know, you killed it. You should name it after yourself. OK. How about Whop? That's the sound it made just before it died. Sounds good to me. Anyway, about the Empire, this coffee plant is similar, you know. Go on, said Avery courteously. It's nature. It tempts you to eat it by its fruits by giving you a temporary buzz. The caffeine, you mean? Yes, the caffeine. Oh, I see. Well, continued Vane, you eat the berries and the seeds, you get a hit from them. You give the plant what it wants. What's that? Manure. Something for it to grow in, so it can replicate and grow. So the Empire is like that? Asked the puzzled Avery. Yeah, it replicates nature. It offers you colourful things for you to consume. You take these in and get a temporary hit, obtaining them, and then you become hooked and want more of the drug. I don't get it. What does consumerism want from you? More people to sell to, for you to reproduce and offer what it wants. More people to sell its colourful things to, so the economy can grow and expand. Exactly, said Vane excitedly. Well, Vane, I must say that you've certainly become a more philosophical since I last spent some time with you, said an impressed Avery. It's not me. These are the theories of the banned economist Edwin Falls. They burnt all his books in the Empire, except those in penitentiary libraries. They forgot about these. Thought nobody would understand it there anyway. I've never been a fan of the Empire anyway. Couldn't quite put my finger on it. But now I think I get the reason that it sends a shiver down my spine. Yes, you're no longer free in the lands of the so-called Free Empire. No wonder so many worlds are defecting and rebelling against this consumer-driven system. Do you know the worst of it, Avery? Vane's eyes were sparkling now, and he looked slightly crazed by the light of the fire. Go on. Shock me, said Avery, turning the pig-like creature over to cook the top part. Their people go and fight wars, thinking they are spreading freedom, when in reality they are spreading enslavement. Ignorance is bliss, I suppose. Yes, they are told that inferior places need to be set free from their backwards ways, and their empire will allow them to live their lives that they desire, when in actual fact, these people don't even want it until they are brainwashed by advertising and media to want things they don't even need. That's why they are so fat, like this creature right here. Fat because they have no abundance, and they are addicted to the sweet taste and consumerism injects into their manufactured consumer-driven foods. So what do you want to do about it, Vane? Not too sure, but it's all very well giving people a communal social solution, as Haynes or Lewis suggest, but without respect and understanding for your fellow man. Then there's no point. You're doomed to fail. Well, you might have to enlighten them first, chipped in Avery. The Empire needs taking out and replacing with a republic that has a level of enlightenment. How are you going to do that, Vane? Said Avery, laughing and cutting a slice of now cooked wop. Coffee, Avery, coffee. You're going to inject enlightenment into every cup, said Avery, trying not to laugh. Now you're beginning to see something, said Vane, not perturbed. If you can push consumerism to all the Empire, you can sell enlightenment and understanding. If we set up a republic state on this planet, where we find coffee, more interesting, take this planet AM4, we could plant coffee here and find a Republican kickback fund. We could fund enlightenment via coffee. Vane, I'm glad you came back from the dead. I'm up for it. But let's not get too carried away. We have to find Coffea. The central light of the universe had decreed that we have been destined to carry out this task. Have you not read Future Direction by Worko Amoeba? No, I can't say I have, said Avery with his mouth full. There were no coincidences. Everything has its time and place. The council, you mean? Asked Avery. Yes, sort of, but natural law rules the universe. Once you can understand that, you can do anything you put your mind to. Here, said Avery, passing Vane some meat he had just cut off whilst listening to Vane. His head was beginning to hurt. I'm going back to the DSO system after this planet. I need to get my ship serviced. Also, my wife thinks that I'm with my father back on BC. You got a good wife, Avery? Asked Vane, showing an unusual level of concern for his now wingman. Yes, I'm happy. She's busy with her new business at beauty parlours. Does a great line in tattoos. I'll have to check it out. Yeah, she's got two now. One in DSO City and a second on New Station. Never had much time for women, said Vane. Not the settling down type, you know. Yeah, I understand. A bit like old Rackham and Phillips. Those two rogues, what became of them? Rackham must be knocking on a bit now. He must have died of old age or retired. He's retired. Phillips, what happened to him? He must be about the same as us, or so. Well, after we took out a bank freighter, we were tracked down by the council. I had sold the rejuvenation disc to Corporation X, and they had appeared to have cloned that brought you back to life. To cut a long story short, Phillips found a world simulator device which the council wanted for their Earth project, and Phillips was chosen to become the planet's future godhead figure and was put in the original rejuvenation device until Earth is ready for him to carry out the council's work. So he's still alive then? So. He said to me that it was going to become remembered forever. More famous, a pirate than any, by becoming a godhead of a planet that, according to him, was more than a pirate could achieve. He was happy. Well, it is an honour bestowed upon very few, especially a no-good pirate such as Phillips. Avery sighed, with a hint of jealousy. What if pirates defeat the Empire? Wouldn't that be more of an achievement? Asked Vane. I guess it would. I guess it would secure the galaxy. In a Republic Federation co-alliance, it would work better than an ideological construct. I've got an idea, Vane, said Avery, cutting another slice of meat off the creature. The flames dancing around his face in the light had gone, revealing a sky full of stars. What is it, Avery? Said Vane, apprehensively. We take coffee to a place where the coffee company doesn't operate. What are you talking about? Avery, they're all across the galaxy, said Vane, disappointedly. We take it to a different galaxy, said Avery, triumphantly. Chapter 2. Touching Base. Avery hadn't been back to his adopted home system for what felt like years. Vane lined up to follow Avery into New Station. It was an unusual sight for those watching morning traffic from various bars and restaurants with viewing facilities to see an Empire fighter in Federation territory. But Vane didn't care too much. He wanted shot of the Bloodhound. Follow me in, Vane. I'll hook you up with Louis and Frank's place. They owe me free services. I'm guessing you want to get rid of that. Look at me. I'm not from these partnerships. We can see you coming. Right? Right. These guys, are they totally safe? You know what I mean, totally safe? Yes, you can trust them. They are what you call a safe bet. You know me, Avery. I don't run too close to the sun. You know that. See that flashing sign over there at the end of the lot? Well, that's their place. Land as near to it as you can, and we'll go see what Louis has to say. You seem well acquainted with these guys, Avery. Let's just say that we have done business in the past. OK, follow me through, said Vane. I'll take this into their fenced area and land your ship on the perimeter. Understood, said Avery, not too happy about taking orders from Vane, especially in his own system. Avery landed and walked a short distance to where Vane had parked within the parameter of Louis and Frank's spaceship yard, and met up with Vane and Louis. He'd made his way out of his makeshift office to see who the visitor was, flying a foreign-built spacecraft from the territories of the Empire. Ah, Louis, this is Captain Vane, a friend of mine. Avery, good to see you. We don't see too many ships like that in these parts, Louis said, taking a quick inspection of the fuselage. No, Louis, as you might have guessed, Vane isn't from around these parts, and I believe that you might be able to take this Bloodhound off his hands. I'll have to check its history first. Not that I don't trust pirates or anything, but I've got a reputation to protect. You understand. That won't be necessary, said Vane, stepping almost nose to nose with his prospective buyer. Stand off, Vane, said Avery angrily, and reluctantly Vane stepped back, giving Avery a disconcerted look. Look, Louis, I've done a favour for you, right? Right, Avery. Well, I'm prepared to swap my free services, this being the last one, for you to take this craft, and swap it for something less empirish, if you follow my meaning. I follow you, Avery. Let's go into the office. Space stations are full of chances and informers. They walked a short distance to Louis's temporary office, which consisted of a section of an old snowcat transporter vessel. Here, gentlemen, have a seat. Let's take a look at the status of your ship. What's the registration code? I don't know, said Vane aggressively. OK. You have the key card there? Yeah, there we go, said Vane, handing the flat card over to Louis. Ooh, I don't have a reader for one of those. You'll have to read it off to me. I'll have to put this in manually. IVC-5XM at AUXA. OK, I've got that. The system brought up a 3D image of the craft and a list of garage visits. This thing hasn't been serviced since it was new. No updated weaponry or storage. The only optional extra this guy brought was an escape capsule. Well, at least he had that, said Vane, still on edge. Ah, there we go, continued Louis. A report attached. Louis clicked on the attached item. Oh, there's something, said Louis, looking straight into Vane's eyes. What's that? Said Vane, now on the edge of his seat. It appears your ship is coming up as lost or stolen. No report mentions a theft of any description. So you can take it then? Asked Avery. Louis continued. Well, technically, if a vessel is reported lost and is found, it's up to the person who finds it to report it to the relevant authorities. And if the owner is no longer with us, I take it. Vane nodded. Then after the appeal goes out and the owner is not found, it becomes property of the finder. So you can take it then? Asked Vane this time. Louis thought for a moment and then said abruptly, I'll take it. And you can take your pick of the ships we've got in stock here or back in Diesel City. Fine, I'll take a look around, said Vane, getting up and leaving the access yard on the desk. So how are things? Avery asked Louis, as Vane went into the yard to start his search for a new ship. You know, Avery. Some days good, some bad. But at least we do normal hours. Catch the last shuttle back to Diesel City, and the first one in. I have a little time to do a little dating and look for my ideal girl. Well, as long as you have something to offer, then you'll be just fine in this system. Yep. Not like the old days of the Republic, when if you had heard of livestock, you could take your pick. That's why my granddad keeps telling me anyway. You, Avery, still happy in your married life? Asked Louis. Yes, I guess so. We have a good relationship. Different lives, with a crossover in the middle. Louis asked. Like two overlapping circles? Say, that's not a bad way of describing it, said Avery, surprised at Louis's philosophical response. I've been reading too many relationship files, replied Louis. Yeah, sometimes you can overanalyze things to the point where you're no longer involved in the situation, but a mere voyeur. Louis looked at Avery as if he was losing the thread of the conversation. Not into that sort of thing, Avery, replied Louis. The conversation was broken by the reappearance of Vane, looking like a kid who had just been told he could have any toy in the toy shop. Well, said Louis. I don't know, said Vane. There's too many good ships out there. I can't decide between the Tuscan Tiger and the Leopard. Well, my friend, said Louis smoothly, the Leopard is a very good all-rounder. Trader, fighter, mining ship. Large hyperspace drive. I want a good fighting ship. I'm not too concerned about anything else. Mining, that's for a loner. Trading, that's for wimps. Fighting, that's the game. Good old-fashioned fighting. Well, take that TT, said Avery. Yeah, Captain Avery's right, said Louis. The Tuscan Tiger is an excellent fighting gun, dual beam lasers, and can outrun anything the Federation Space Police can put out there. How rare are they? Asked Vane. Well, I've been doing this game for as long as I can remember, and I've only ever seen half a dozen come into Diesel. I'll check the records if you like and see how many they've made. Vane sat down next to Avery, while Louis tapped away on his ancient-looking office computer. What does it say? Asked Vane impatiently. Well, I'm just looking. It appears that they've made 360 of them, and most were bought by a courier service that specialised in dangerous systems. Package power. These were all scrapped for their metal value, and the business was liquidated due to many losses, it says. And there were only 3 who were saved by ex-employees and brought them at scrap value. That's it. Only 3. So this craft is now super rare? Asked the now excited Vane. You could say that. Though the ship had a sister ship, which is just known as the Tiger. But that wasn't anything like this. It was a small one-man fighter, which was standard issue to the Federation's Navy fleet. So they only made 360 TTs for specialist companies such as Package Power. OK, said Vane, looking at Avery. I'll take it. He spat on his hand and went to shake Louis. Louis reluctantly shook and smiled as best he could. The familiar sounds of a tattooist needle whizzed as Avery and Vane stepped into what many regard as a woman's domain. Hair was being dyed strange and exotic colours by Bonnie's apprentice, Flick, and she was busy finishing off an image of a mystical space serpent on a lady's derriere. "Hi," said Bonnie excitedly, as she saw her husband and his new friend enter the tattoo room at the back of the shop. "Who's your friend?" "Ah, this is Captain Vane. We've been on a little detour to, well, let's say, find the secret of the coffee company." "You know I've told you, Avery. Forget about that crazy plan. You never could get to the bottom of their layers of secrecy." "Nice tattoo, Bonnie," said Vane, trying to change the subject. Tattoo parlours were not the ideal place to discuss delicate business. "Thanks," said a flattered Bonnie, looking Vane up and down. "You look like the kind of guy man that enjoys body art." "Sure I do, but only on myself," said Vane automatically. Bonnie looked at Avery, and Avery intervened. "How about a nice coffee bean tattoo for the mission, Vane?" "You game?" asked Vane. "Sure," replied Avery, and turned to Bonnie. "Bonnie, can you do us a couple of, say, steaming hot mugs of coffee? Or let's just go for a coffee bean on the thumb each." He looked back to Vane and asked, "What do you say to that, Vane?" "Nice touch. It will signify an alliance. Your 10,000 federal francs and mine in an account, and I think that would be the next step." 10,000 federal francs, said Bonnie. "What are you up to, Avery? Don't go getting messed up with the council again, will you?" Vane interrupted. "The council? Have you been sailing too close to the wind, Avery?" "No, not really. It's a long story. After we get these beans done and visited the bank, I'll tell you over a cold one." "All right, Avery, you first," said Vane, pointing to the chair. Avery duly sat down next to the tattooing table and put his right hand on the table so Bonnie could see it under her bright worklight. She prepared the needle that her former client, now fully dressed and paying Flick for her sore backside. Flick came in clutching the phone. "It was your father. He says he has to be close to the parlour in Deso City." She turned back on her squeaky shoes and shoved the phone in Bonnie's face. "He said that he had to be close to the parlour in Deso City early today as he has a date." "A date? Since when was Jim dating?" said a surprised Avery, as Bonnie began to outline her dark brown coffee bean on the top part of Avery's thumb. Hair began to burn, and the putrid smell made Bonnie wince for a moment. "Since last week," said Bonnie. "He met his old girlfriend from the taxing days. She and my dad used to have breaks together now and again." "He hasn't taken up tattooing as well, has he?" asked Avery. "No, he's got an artist in while I step up this place. I'm going to train Flick up to take over at this end." "Oh, right," said Avery, trying to talk through the pain that was pressing up his arm from his thumb. "So what are you boys up to then?" Bonnie asked. Vane got there first. "We would love to discuss it, wouldn't we, Avery?" "Love to. Well, we cannot divulge anything until we've completed this mission," said Avery through gritted teeth. I'm done here, said Bonnie, inspecting her handiwork. Yes, I like that. Vane took over the seat and placed his thumb ready for Bonnie to carry out her transformation. You know, he said slowly, I used to have a whole arm full of tattoos, but when I got my new body, they'd all gone. Same here, said Bonnie, surprised at the similarity of their experiences. Yes, said Avery. You have both been reborn as yourselves in a regenerated body, a tattoo blemish-free body. Well, I've certainly made up for that, said Bonnie, finishing off Vane's small but well-rounded coffee bean tattoo. Avery just nodded. There, all done, gents. Pay the work girl on the way out, she joked. We're off to discuss business, said Avery, getting hold of Bonnie and giving her a big hug and kiss. We'll contact you as soon as I know where we're going to next. So, we have money in account and a list of unexplored systems, Avery. So what do you suggest we go first? Vane asked, looking into the bottom of his latest drink. They were sat in a small bar just near the branch of the Bank of Deso, where they had opened a business account named the Coffea Exploration Company. Avery pulled out his list. What we need is a system so we can travel from one system to another without having to double back, so we can spend more time exploring and less time in stations refueling. What we need to remember is that there are no repair centres and space stations in these new systems. Nothing. No help if we get into trouble. So we need to work together at all times and not go off on our own, said Avery, like he was Vane's father. What are you saying, Avery? You don't trust your old friend? Vane asked. Of course not. Would you trust you? Came the counter question. Probably not, said a down-faced Vane. Well, there we go, said Avery, downing his strong wheat-based sugary alcoholic drink. Do you think anyone has thought of this before, Avery? Asked Vane. No, I don't think anyone would even think that coffee comes from the Coffea plant and that it grows in the ground. Most people would probably think that coffee is actually a manufactured commodity that comes from coffee factories. Nobody outside of 1°4774 has seen a real coffee bean. It's all ground up before they ship it out. Avery passed the list over to Vane. OK, so we have 10 planets to visit. Alpha Magna is a definite no, he said, striking it off. 8 systems left to visit. I reckon if we do a system with 2 planets, then we should take a planet each to try and cut down the legwork and make our lives a little easier. Besides, a little bit of trust between us would go a long way. Vane eyed Avery optimistically. Avery thought about this and rubbed his stubbly chin. All right, I agree, but only on these 2 places that have the possibility of Coffea growing on the 2 planets in a single star system. Apart from those, we stick together, and even then we must remain in constant radio contact, just in case one of us gets into some sort of bother. You just don't know what exists on a strange, unexplored planet. Vane had a story about this. You've heard about the sea monsters on Titan in the Bellaho system. The Federation thought that this place would make a good testing colony until their fishing vessels started disappearing at an alarming rate. It wasn't until they caught one of these monsters with a ship as bait and pulled it up to the space lab for analysis that they realised that it was going to prove impossible for them to carry on their operation without destroying all these massive sea creatures. Which, if they had done so, would have destroyed the entire ecosystem and killing off the fish in the sea that depended upon the existence of these leviathans. Yeah, that's right, said a surprised Avery. Vane continued. I once saw a man eaten by a galoop. A galoop is a blind lizard-like creature that can smell blood as far away as the eye can see. He cut his leg on a razor plant and was bleeding away. But as soon as some blood fell on the ground, they were waiting. Soon we were blocked in from four sides by these bloodthirsty lizard creatures. Two of us got away by creeping past them, but poor old Clark, he stood no chance. They were sniffing him out. Soon set upon by the unfortunate guy. Vane just shook his head and finished his drink. That's why we need to be careful. We don't know, nor does anyone else know what it is that we're actually letting ourselves in for. I suggest we go and get some backup weaponry and armour jackets, just in case, warned Avery. Fine. Let's go and visit the arms store and pay off the account. It is to both our advantages that we both stay alive, Vane said, and then got up to leave. That way we can call for assistance. Avery stood up too, and at last the guys were in agreement about something. Exactly, said Vane, as they left the bar. The former Captain Red Hand had settled into his new life as a rich, New gentleman of leisure, after his payment from the council. All, however, was not going well for Eric. He had it all. So he thought. Money, admiring women, and respect, no, not respect, jealousy of others that appeared to have less than him. But Eric wasn't happy. He genuinely missed the days he'd spent amongst his fellow brethren. What he felt was he did not belong in Ross 154. He just didn't enjoy life anymore. There were no bawdy bars to visit, no stories of a great adventure. And what was worse, people could truly be shocked if he admitted that he was a former pirate. Indeed, he rebuilt his face, had to be reconstructed on the pretense that he was in a tragic mining accident that took half his face off. Now, Eric wasn't one to stand and let misery take hold of him. No, he was determined to rebuild his life amongst his own. He sat in his palatial palace with his fountains in the front, with cook making him his breakfast, served by a beautiful robot servant. Eric played with the beer mat that was taken off Captain Phillips months earlier, looking at the map he had drawn out for him to reach the outer moons. There must be something worth discovering out there, he said to his robot girlfriend. Everything you want is here, was the programmed reply. Yes, of course it is, he found himself saying, just to shut the robot's automated happiness response. What was it that Phillips had in his mind, and why were the council interested? Were thoughts he had pondered for weeks now, but could not figure it out. The only way he was going to find out was to go to the dangerous regions of Vidfar. The thought had put him off every time, but now he was becoming increasingly curious and equally happy with his current situation. It was no good. He was going to have to go off to Vidfar and either hire someone to go to G4, the outer moon of the planet G. If that half-wit Phillips could make it back, then Red Hand could imagine making himself the same trip. It was then that Eric noticed that a corner of the beer mat was torn, and a flap in the corner was hanging off from the back of the map. He slowly peeled off the back and was surprised to find a message. 10 steps from the digger towards the star, 5 left and 15 towards the star. Again, he said aloud. That wasn't his writing and could only belong to Phillips. What had he put there, he asked himself. That's nice, darling, said the robot. Red Hand stood up and started to think of the easiest way of selling his assets and getting off of Ross 154 and back to Vidfar. He found himself contacting his local spacecraft yard to see what he had checked in his finances, to see if he could buy and put this pile on the market, while still being able to make a move now. Hello, is this Graham's U Space Yard? He said, speaking into the large cinema-sized screen he constructed in his main lounge. Yes, sir, I'm Graham. What are you looking for? Something fast with serious weaponry, was Eric's quick-fire response. All right, said Graham, face pondering. I will check our stocks and send you various details. The line went down. The screen blackened, and after a few moments statistics and images of the craft appeared on the huge screen. Eric said, Next! And the following details came up. That's a nice one, dear, said the robot whilst clearing away his breakfast things. Next, said Eric, completely ignoring the robot's response. Ah, that's what I'm looking for. A hybrid starblazer that has serious aggressive ship. How much for that one? The price flashed up in Imperial dollars. Eric winced and started to do the math on his fingers. 10,000 Imperial dollars. That will totally clear me all my accounts, but at least I'll be able to get out of this weird place, he thought. The doorbell rang, and his robot wife turned and automatically went to answer. I'll get it, darling, she said, as Eric reverted to the communication back to the visual wavelength. Graham, I want to buy your Hyperstar Blazer. Good choice, friend, good choice. How would you like to pay? He said, smiling from ear to ear, revealing his expensive smile. Eye scan, said Eric. He put his non-transplanted eye up to the screen, and Graham pressed the scanner that took a 360-degree rotating image of the eye. This will only take a few minutes, Graham said as he tapped with his right hand at the second processing screen. At that moment, Molly 251 came in, with a friendly but stern-looking female police officer with some paperwork in her hand. She wants to ask you a few questions, Reddy, said Molly as she sat down behind the standing Eric. Okay, I'll be done in a few minutes. Just had to carry out this transaction. Very well, I'll wait, said the officer, now crossed arms and looking around the room admiringly. Graham was back at the screen. It appears, Mr. Redhand, yes, Mr. Redhand, that your assets have been frozen. I can't access anything from your combined accounts. I see you have company, said Graham, noticing the addition of a police officer in the room. I'm sure you'll sort this out in a couple of days. Come back to us and I'll hold the ship for you until the end of the week. Damn, said Redhand. What's the matter, dear? Came the automated response from Molly. Redhand ignored her and turned to the now seated police officer. What appears to be the problem, officer? My accounts are frozen, and you have with you what looks like a string of questions regarding my finances. Am I right? Not quite, she said calmly. Please sit down. Redhand sat down next to the officer, who tried not to notice that it was still in his dressing gown. If it's about that speeding ticket, I paid that last week, he said hopefully. No, it's quite a little bit more serious than that, said the officer. Okay, what is it? I'm dying to know. Just what has caused the authorities on this insane planet to cut me off like this? Well, she started shuffling through her paperwork. I have it on good authority that you are having... She looked at Molly and back at Redhand. Sexual relations with a robot. Heck! Where the hell did you hear such nonsense? Questioned Eric. The updates for your 251. Robots send feedback through patterns back to the manufacturer to make sure that no robots are being misused under their terms and conditions. You did read the terms and conditions, didn't you, Mr. Redhand? Well, you go through these long-winded documents and just agree to get rid of the installation girl. Hey, I paid for everything. I should be able to do with my property as I want, said a defiant Eric. Well, off-worlders like yourself may be able to do what you want with robots on your own planet. But in our star system, not here in Ross 514. We do things differently. Robots, animals, and plants have rights. We are an eco-cooperation ship. We all benefit from good relationships. So you don't deny having sex with a robot, then? Her eyes narrowed as she looked straight into Redhand's good eye to gauge a response. What the hell? I did a few adjustments of my own. Where's the harm? Oh, Mr. Red Hand, I don't think you realise the severity of your actions. No, I don't. What is it, a $50 Imperial fine, something like that? No, Mr. Red Hand, I'm arresting you on the charge of having sex with a robot. You could get 50 years. There was a hive of activity in the corporation's base in the Empire. There were new staff hired to work all the hours to bring out results. This is what was demanded by the government. There was no room for error. The Empire was preparing for war, and it had turned Corporation X into its new clone production centre. Men and women worked overnight processing DNA strands from donors that had seen the brainwashing material that had requested all the citizens were duty-bound to provide enough DNA samples to reproduce themselves as prospective fighting drones. Anthony Reeves had some years back now perfected the machine to produce clones, but now it was able to perform its primary function of life support whilst travelling through deep space. So how many clones have we got? Asked the government's Minister for Technology, Donald Christopherson, to Hendrik Larsson, the new manager. I've checked the figures that Reeves left me before he went back to DSO system. Tony had gone back on a requested transfer. The idea of producing clones for military purposes went beyond his ethical limits. What does it say? Pressed Donald. It predicts that we should have around 10,000 clones produced from the DNA of all the clones. That's great news. But when will they be ready to start training? As soon as they undergo the Empire's orientation program to make them compliant and fit in enough to be of service, Hendrik said, scratching his head. Good, said Donald, slapping Hendrik on the back repeatedly. Some months earlier, Tony wrote to the Galactic Times. Addressee: Amanda Wilcox, Galactic Times, Angel City, Vista 1, Alpha Centauri B, 4536-27-67. Anthony Reeves, 11 Rue Devine, DSO City, Radian. DSO System, 2345-78-90. And it read, Dear Amanda, I thought I would write to you concerning the operations of Corporation X in Nelson City. I am sure you are aware that I have been working on a secret project concerning cloning for the Empire's prison service. Well, I think things have got a bit out of hand regarding cloning, and the Empire desires to have switched from one of internal affairs to those of producing clones on a massive scale, to such an extent that every citizen is required to donate enough body hair to reproduce themselves in clone form. This goes against all my ethical parameters and has therefore forced me to transfer back to DSO City. I felt it was my duty to inform you about their plans to produce a massive army of fighter pilots to swamp the galaxy, in another attempt to take control once and for all. I know this will be viewed as scaremongering and that many will not take this seriously. However, it is vital that I get you to write a story or reprint this letter anonymously. I regret that I have no more evidence than my own eyewitness account, though it is well known that the Empire have the technology to carry out reincarnation, due to the publicity that the prison system program has attracted. Feel free to contact me if you require any information. Signed A.R. Lansonson took off his new boots for a tour of the facility. It has expanded greatly and required a sight buggy to get about the vast hangars full of bodies of differing stages of development. The buggy came to a stiff halt, and Christopherson leaped out with a look of impatience on his face. There had been a real buzz that had spread across the higher echelons of the Empire. The thoughts of the old day, supremacy of the old Empire, whipping everything that had stood against it, filled men with Christopherson with a greedy heady cocktail of desire and supremacy. Lansonson slid the open hangar door, revealing a vast array of machines, all flashing and whirring at different levels of production. "This is E10, sir," announced Larsonson. "There are another 60 of these hangars, all individually producing 1,666 units. So we can do that every week if required. So we can, in theory, if we have enough DNA coding, produce endless lines of personnel." "This is great. Just what we require." "So you say you can produce endless lines. How is that possible?" asked Christopherson. "We make clones from clones. These people don't realise that they are clones and donate the same way that normal citizens do." "What about their memories of childhood, etc.? How do you make them think that they're birthed normally?" "That's the clever bit," said Larsonson, leading his boss into the control room. "It's a fully automated process, sir. These computers compile lives from already established social networks, gather data from other people's lives, video clips, photos, that sort of thing, and implant these fake memories into the host. They are born, if you like, with fully functioning past lives and experiences." "What about family? Friends?" "They have all left their past lives behind, cut all ties to join up. The computer system here controls all that they make their contacts, so it replicates their parents, sends them presents, mail and photos of their fabricated pasts." "All watertight then?" "We believe so." Screens flashed on walls and provided a glimpse into the massive mining project that the computer system was undertaking. School photos, girlfriends, boyfriends, and all that life had had to offer a normally birthed citizen. "This is remarkable," said Christopherson, rubbing his hands across on the top of the screen, showing a baby shower followed by photos of a holiday on some exotic island. "Have you got them ready?" he asked. "Well," said Lansonson, rubbing his chin, "we have one experimental model ready for further trials that has had all the relevant coding put in place. I can't see the harm in you meeting her, but it must be under controlled conditions. We don't want Alice finding out she is... You understand?" Yes, of course. "I'm just curious about these things. I've never met a clone before. I just want to see what they are like, what reactions they have to certain situations." The two made their way outside and got back to the buggy and headed back to the main office building, where the clone they had finally named Alice was located. The spaceport-style cart travelled along, its solar-powered engine whirred. Both men were lost in thought. Alice sat at her window, staring out over the vast complex. She could remember a time when she and her brother would play in the lake near their house, running through the forest on cold sunny mornings to see if the ice had melted on the lake. William, that was his name. Alice flicked through the photos on her handheld computer and tried to figure out what had happened to him. He must have grown up. Why did he contact her? And for the same matter, why was she in this complex? There was only a memory of going to university from random photos of her and her friends at parties and graduation. A cart approached a building. She was used to visitors and had been examined, probed and asked questions on various occasions. There was no reason to suspect that this visit was to be any different. As she heard the men approach, she realised that they weren't the usual people that came to see to find out how things were. What she could remember about her life she has had as a child, and other questions such as, what was her favourite colour or fruit? "Hello, Alice," said Lansonson. "This is Christopherson. He's here to ask you a few questions. Is that all right?" "Yes, but I've got one question I'd like to ask first," she said confidently. "What is it, Alice?" said Christopherson. Where is my brother? William. Chapter 3. Reunited. Henry Weaver was finishing his shift when he saw a familiar face looking in through the glass windows. It was Reginald. Reginald spotted Henry, gave a look around the bar from the safety outside. It was empty. He decided it was safe enough to enter. Henry recognised him and passed him a small soft drink, which he'd remembered Reginald had drunk on his previous visit. Reginald sat down on a rotating bar stool and thanked Henry for the drink that was now waiting for him. "How are you, Henry?" said Reginald, twisting the glass in a clockwise direction. "Fine, I guess. Is it that Captain Avery you have come to warn me about again? I've not seen him since that night." "I'm guessing he doesn't know it was me that put the council onto him." "I'm not here about that, but I reckon he's onto you. But has more important matters to deal with at present. However," continued Reginald, "I would recommend you read the secret message I have from you from TCR." Reginald held up his wrist, which activated a light, which shone onto the well-polished bar. A hologram of Judy Lynn appeared on the bar and stood a hand tall, facing along the bar, appearing to address Henry and Reginald. "This request is from TCR on an urgent matter. Your attendance is required here at TCR HQ within the next lunar month, and we will require you to dispose of all your assets and only bring with you any soul-bearing entities that are in your possession." "I think she means your cat, Henry," interjected Reginald. "And from here we will instruct you further. I cannot give you any more information at this time. I'm sorry we are pulling you out of your position with us, but something has come up, and I—" She paused as if the information was hard for even her to believe. "We will talk later, Henry. This is neither the time nor the place to do this. Trust we have your best interest at heart, and we will make sure all is done to accommodate you." Reginald gave a wink and went to drink some more of his soft drink. "So all you have to do is dispose of your life there." The signal ended, and Judy Lynn flickered and the light disappeared. "What is going on?" asked Henry. "I'm not sure," was the reply. "Have I messed something up?" "No, I think it is more likely the other way round. I think there is something they want from you, Henry." "Oh, great. I have to sell up my life here and take the next shuttle. When is it?" "Tomorrow," said Reginald. "Look, rent out your place, quit your job, and take your cat with a basket. You do have a pet passport, right?" "No, why would I? I didn't plan on visiting my folks in their FAF system any time soon," said Henry, a little bit stressed by his now heightened sense of urgency. "Look," said Reginald, as calm as he could, "I can get you a council's passport for you and your cat tonight. I'll put in a request. Send it through to you via courier. Will arrive with you, say, 9 strokes tomorrow." "Okay, Reginald, that'll be fine. And my money in the bank from TCR, that will continue?" "I guess," said Reginald. "Not 100% sure." "So I'll be able to leave the flat as it is until I return?" "I don't know. If the council wants you to sell up, there is a good reason. I'll buy the place. I quite like it. South-facing aspect with the twin suns coming up in the morning. Besides, I'm tired of renting. I've got another 9 years or so here, so I might as well make the most of my time and money." Henry gave Reginald a quizzical look and said, "You've been thinking about this, haven't you, Reg?" "Yes, I guess I have. I'm trying to make the most of a difficult situation for you and I." "Well, I can't help and benefit too." "I'll have to get a better travel basket for Olo. was the Henry could think to say. Henry went home and put a video onto his parents' planet, Texel, in the OFAF system, and left a message. Hi Mum and Dad, I've got some news. I've been offered a job with TCR in the OFAF system. So I have to leave tomorrow. I guess I'll contact you when I get there. I take it you're on holiday again, so I'll say my goodbyes now. I'm taking Olo along also, so goodbye from both of us until we speak next. Henry finished the call, put the recording machine into sleep mode, and went into the kitchen to fix himself some food. He was met by Olo, who had jumped up onto the table to be at hand level to receive Henry's affections, and to demand food with an insisting meow and stare, which was her form of communication. Okay, yes, I'll get the message. Fish and onion, only the best for you, only the best. He quickly fed Olive and placed a half-eaten tin into the fridge, thinking about the fact that this was the last meal he would feed her in this flat. He checked the stocks and found he had enough for the journey to Altair and closed it again. Henry took his meal that no longer to prepare than it took Olive to eat hers into the living room. He ordered a pattern from a cat basket from 3D World and set his printer to work to make a sturdy plastic carrier for Olive to travel in. He sat chewing his food and wondering what it was the council wanted for him. As Reginald had said, it could be anything bad. As the council, or more precisely TCR, would not want him to sell up and move out of his place. A message opened on the screen of the floor of his apartment. It was an offer from Reginald for the flat, which he had managed to put on the market whilst talking the underground home. He accepted the offer and sat back looking around him at the apartment he had brought with his aunt's money and wondered where the would end up next. Part of him regretted considering the ad in the Deso Gazette months earlier. But what would his life consist of now, he thought? A drab job in a bar full of rowdy punters spilling their drinks on his freshly cleaned bar, reading comic books and wishing to be off somewhere else, doing something else. That was it. He could now live his own adventure. Sure, embrace the future would be his new mantra. He looked at Olive and said, and she just blinked, in agreement, without any concern for future events. At least she was a connection to his past, more important than photos of his fake family. He packed up his utensils and began to eat his food. Flicked through the latest copy of Space Dust and found himself, as he had been his way before. As long as he could remember, getting lost in the text and brightly coloured pictures of his childhood heroes, such as Spectrum and Night Stalker. He imagined a name for himself. Hey, Olive, he found himself saying. What do you reckon to barman? Olive just stared and with slanted eyes. Okay, no. How about Space Cowboy? Again, Olive looked nonplussed. I've got it. Space Ace. Olive purred approvingly. Donald Christopherson was gazing at Alice through the one-way glass of the interview room, while excusing themselves just moments before. What shall I say? Asked Christopherson. Tell her that William has joined the Empire's army and is off on combat duty. We will fill in the gaps from there, was the clever reply from Lansonson. Okay, but I don't want to blow this whole experiment. So let's make this quick. Both men entered with coffees, hastily gained from the machine in the viewing room. Lansonson had made one for Alice and passed it over the desk while smoothly saying, "Here, Alice. Forgot the coffees." "Thanks," said Alice, oblivious to the problem she had caused with the probing question about her brother. "William," said Christopherson, "he's joined the Empire's army. We are expecting contact from him soon. So we will pass this message straight to your comms device you have here." "Why can't I contact him myself?" she asked. "There is no contact with military personnel," said Lansonson. "Oh, right. So I can pass the message on to him, can I?" "Yes, of course. Just write it and send it to admin, and they will process it to him." "Sounds reasonable," said Alice, now satisfied with the situation. She sat back in her chair and stared out at the world and said to Christopherson, "I thought you wanted to ask me a few questions." "Yes, I do." Christopherson relaxed and drank from his coffee, trying to remember what he wanted to ask when they were in the room only for a short time before. The aggression in Alice surprised him, but she was going to become a fighting tool of the Empire, facing the hardships that entailed, and for that he was pleased. "So where were you born, Alice?" "I was born in Nelson City Hospital. A twin, my brother, William, you see. I haven't seen him since. I don't know when." "I see," said Christopherson. "Where did you go to school?" "I went to Wingate Academy for the Gifted. I was good at playing the harpooner, you see." She pressed a comms device and pictures of what she perceived. To be a younger self appeared, a small child, medals for musical achievement around her neck, with proud sets of parents standing either side. "I say, that's very impressive," said Christopherson. "Thanks," said Alice, taking the device back. "Can you still play?" said Christopherson, genuinely curious. "No, I gave it up when I got to high school, concentrated on studying and got into sport. Started playing hoopball for the school and thought about a more physical future. That is why I'm here, I guess." "I guess so," said Lansonson. "My twin brother William used to be in the space race scene, flying homemade craft in illegal weekend meets for many years." Then the scene went professional. Alice produced another photo from her handheld device. "Look," she said enthusiastically, pointing at the picture. "And this too," handing it to Lansonson. On the screen he could see a younger teenage Alice with her brother holding a small but rare item. An interplanet amateur space race cup. Only lasted for 3 years before they legitimised the races and the sponsors and moved in. My brother became disillusioned and took himself off to try and start a new scene in another jurisdiction. Came back after the professionals offered him a sponsorship deal and a racing bonus every time he won." "So how come he ended up in the military?" asked Christopherson. "Not sure. We lost touch, you see. He was going all over the Empire whilst I was finishing grad school. I got hooked up with a new life. He stopped sending me messages and that was that. I used to hear the odd thing through my parents, but that's about it. That's why I'm asking you." "Oh, I see. That's fine. We will look into it, as I said," replied Lansonson. "I think that is all I need to know," said Christopherson, smiling and standing to leave. "Yes, thank you, Alice. We will let you know when we have heard from your brother," concurred Lansonson. When both men had reached the safety of the viewing suite, Christopherson sounded his approval. "Yes, I may say you have done a fine job with her. A real effective piece of brainwashing. She really thinks she has a twin brother." "Yes, I know," replied a happy and satisfied Lansonson. "We haven't made him yet. but we will be on a fully next functioning prototype. Yes, it will be interesting to see how they are together, if that is okay with you. That works fine for me, replied Lancerson. Good. Let's make it the same time next year. I'll have to check the schedule and get back to you on that, sir. Call me Donald. Well, Donald, I will get back to you on your progress here, and then arrange a meeting between Alice and William at your convenience. Very good. Donald gathered his things from the desk and strolled out of the complex to a waiting air car that sped him off in the direction of the main city centre so he could report back to his superiors. Alice sat in her room, which had posters of her favourite electro rock band, Hyenroth, and put her favourite track on and danced around the room to the techno beat, dancing out her frustrations and fears. Tomorrow she was scheduled to start her defence training, for entry into the Empire's army. This would test her and the potential others for their eventual planned mass invasion of the Federation and Republic worlds. The music rose and fell as Alice jumped onto her rug and danced with a hairbrush in front of her mirror. Alice had recorded herself numerous times and was getting better at this routine each time she performed it. It was a strange thing that Alice, even though she was soulless, enjoyed music so much. It may be in the DNA of our species that drumming and beats send us into primeval trance, which involves movement. Alice's DNA donor, on the other hand, was an elderly lady who enjoyed classical ethnic music and lived with her sister, who had suggested that she should donate her DNA as she was going to. There had been a continuous advert appearing on all mobile advertising boards around the city that could, with people realising, create a need for something which before they did not even think about. That was the great thing about the market economy. If you had a big enough population to feed off, then you could make a lot of money selling future junk. When others saw that you had a piece of junk that they didn't have, they felt the need to get a new piece of junk to replace their old piece of junk that looked like, well, junk to them now. But the new shiny thing that was advertised made them despise it for all the wrong reasons. This request had, on the underground scene with the Empire, brought about a notion of soul existence, and the realisation amongst a few enlightened intellectuals that souls were not a myth, but did really exist. Illegal material began to be published in crude leaflet form and was beginning to be distributed hand to hand, so the authorities could not simply block the content electronically due to the cloning program. A new emerging enemy of the Empire was emerging. They were young, non-adjusted to the ways of the Empire, and were considered by the authorities and by a great expanse of the population as lowlife. But what they were spreading was the truth, and this was increasingly difficult to suppress, given all the mental and physical health problems the citizens who considered themselves as free were suffering. Captain Avery and Vane, Toto system. Captain Avery and Vane gave each other a stare. Both men were not taking any chances in this quest. Pirates were funny like that in pairs. As a group, they worked democratically and would appoint a natural leader and follow orders for the betterment of all. But as a couple, they were often disputes, sometimes fighting, which often ended in death. Avery knew Vane too well to fall out with him, so decided to make him think that he was driving this mission on. This gave the impression that Avery was playing a second harp to Vane, but in reality, Avery was taking a back seat and there wasn't any more important decisions to be made. He had already made them, and the rules they had both declared to follow. Avery swung his vessel into position and prepared to hyperspace to the Toto system. "Are you ready, Vane?" he asked. "When you are," said Vane's typical response. "Ready, Vane," said Avery, following the lead. "Okay, let's do this together." "Agreed," replied Avery. "On the count of 3, said Vane. 1, 2, 3, they said in unison, and were gone in a flash of light, leaving identical trails. Toto system was quite small, with only 3 planets and only had 1 moon. "Let's get this system pegged out," said Avery, setting his scanning map. "Likewise," said Vane, still not trusting Avery. Pulses were sent out from each ship and travelled out in circular waves and returned each time they hit a target: a moon, a planet, a ship, or Toto itself. Time passed as both men waited. Avery decided to make a coffee while the information came back. Vane opened up the music file which he had downloaded from Avery's system and listened to the track entitled Purity Control. He sat back in his chair and laughed at the situation he now found himself in. All these years sitting in a stinking gull, dreaming of nothing but death and release from this restricted world. But then he had got his wish. He died. Got into a fight with the biggest murdering crazy he could find, and sure enough, he had been stabbed right through the heart while in the kitchen chopping vegetables. "Tank Jack," he said out loud as the track ended, and he played the next tune on his list, Conway Park, and was interrupted by Avery. "How's it going, Vane?" said the voice of Avery in an automated male tone. "Yes, I'm almost there. All I have is there is 2 planets, Toto 2 and Toto 3. That one out of the living zone." "Yep, got that too. So let's head towards Toto. I mean to say, the star." "Do you think that we should send out a signal to see if there is anyone at home here?" asked Vane. "I can't see why not. It can't do any harm." Avery humoured him. "What happens if we get a reply?" "Who would be listing a system that nobody knows has a living zone, has a planet in it? I'm not sure." Vane rehashed a message to transmit in any equipment there may be present. He deliberately sent it out in lossy ard, which could be read by any equipment that was primitive or advanced. "This is Captain Avery and Captain Vane requesting any response to this message. Come in." He multiplied the message to reflect all languages used through the Milky Way galaxy. Nothing. "I think we can safely say," said Avery, when something interrupted him. "Who dares enter our system? Prepare to be blasted out of domain." Wait, said Avery. "We come in peace. We're in search of a certain plant." "A plant? What sort of plant?" "The Coffea plant," replied Avery. "We have no plant. We have no idea what you're talking about." Who am I talking to?" asked Avery. "We're a secret commune. We wish not to be detected. You must leave now or die." "I don't think you have the ability to do anything from that far away," said Avery confidently. "OK, you want to see what we've been working on?" A red light could be seen detected on the single moon rotating around Toto, and a huge laser web began to grow, with a central point being fed by a wheel with spokes. It span, and the power built, and the laser fired out between the 2 ships. "OK, I'll get your point," We're going to leave, said Vane. Just tell us where you are from, insisted Avery. We are from the Sims. We wish not to tell you more than this. It is only part of what we do. Why are you here? Pushed Vane. We want to control, so we can rule. Let's go, said Avery. Let's not get involved with this. I think that the only... But it was too late. Vane's ship had been vaporised by the red beam. His soul belongs to us now, said the booming voice. Remove yourself from our jurisdiction. We have no further use for you at this time. Leave. So Avery set course for his next stop. Nouveau Horizonte. Not waiting to find out what was really going on in the Toto system. Dawn on Toto 1, there was a flurry of activity. Great glass vats containing souls whirling around in a swirling motion. A single glowing soul entered via the bottom of one vast vat and joined the others swirling around in a connecting control room. There were groups of uniform-clad officials measuring results and calibrating soul transitions to overcome the balance from a spiritual understanding of the universe, to complete a commercial and material one. One of the officials, Zalbo, was on a telepathic device talking to the Supreme Leader of the Dark Control. Yes, Your Greatness. We have this day been infiltrated by 2 pirate spacecraft arrived from the DSO. They appear to be looking for a Coffea plant, which I assume are for the use of outdoing the monopoly held by your illustrious company. Do you think they will locate it? No, I think they are trying to find plants elsewhere. Good then, we are safe in that department. And the soul you regained from Nelson City, can we ascertain what it was that tricked your facility to send a soul back to its same body? No, we are not sure who is responsible or how this thing operates at present. We have still sent a collective only yesterday to establish a working unit to allow us to infiltrate the origin of this bypass of our soul system. Good. I look forward to seeing your reports with the other leaders out of conglomeration. What do you want me to do with the soul of Captain Vane? Asked Salvo. Well, I think we should use him appropriately. Our sources have indicated that there is going to be an attempt by the Council to start a paradise for those that are at the centre. This gives us the opportunity to disrupt their plan, and I think your Captain Vane may be useful in this affair. I suggest you isolate him for now and await instructions for his future use. Yes, Your Greatness. If the reports are right, then the Council are preparing to expand their influence into our strongholds. We must take preemptive action to cause confusion and chaos amongst the people. They intend to bring it into the new arena of play. What is the name of the system they want to penetrate first? Asked Zobo. All I can say is that it is the planet or Earth as we know it, and they wish to make their presence known. They do not wish us to know of their plans, but have listened to the recent robbery transmissions from the Zendin system, and we are sure they took themselves off to Earth to dispose of the cargo vessel. We cannot go and check this out without being detected, but maybe you can find out more from this vein. Yes, sir, I will do my best to find out what this Earth was like so we can plan. The Altair system. Henry had taken the anonymous-looking shuttle from the planet Atlas. The shuttle descended without hesitation into the crater. As the only passenger, Henry had nobody to share his concerns with. They were entering a crater that looked like a suicide mission by the android pilot. They are trying to kill me, thought Henry. But as they hit the bottom, Henry realised that in fact they were entering a secret base. Henry smiled out of the small window. That a welcoming committee had formed and could not imagine that it was for him. As the shuttle landed, he remembered that Olive was still in the hold. He disembarked, collected his cat and a small luggage case, and was confronted as he balanced himself up. "Henry, we've been expecting you. Welcome to the TCR," said Judy Lynn. Marcus, who accompanied her, continued. "Henry, we have some exciting things to discuss with you. First, feel free to make yourself at home. Accommodation for you and Olive has been arranged for you for the foreseeable future, and we are sure that all is to your specifications and liking." Marcus led the small party to the reception area, where an automated system handed Marcus a blue fob, like a device that gave access to the suites in the living section of your station. "Yes, and for Olive," Judy intersected, "we have a feline VR experience, where we have programmed Alice Weaver's former cottage on radiant into it. I do recall that we have promised this to her, and she was used by us to recruit you in the first place." Olive meowed, as if a cupboard had just opened in Henry's kitchen, containing cans of fish and onion cat food. "What is it that you have brought me here to do?" asked Henry. "All will be revealed in good time, Henry, but first we want to show you what we are working on at the moment at TCR," replied Judy Lynn. Henry went through various security checks before they made it into the centre of the complex, and where they presented the pre-world observation device to him, or, as it had received the acronym POD, for ease of reference. "What is that?" asked Henry. "This," said Marcus, "is something really quite exciting. With this, we can control conditions within a world and predict the necessary levels of positive and negative energy to produce a perfectly balanced world." "Why would you want to do that?" asked Henry, clearly confused by the idea. "Well, as you may or may not realise, that we have a problem within the galaxy, which we want to observe and later can understand. It is prevalent across the universe, but it seems to have concentration within this galaxy. We wish to bring it into balance." "Okay, I think I get it. But why do you want to experiment with this device? Why don't you just take them by force?" "Well, it's not that easy, as we do not wish to interfere. Look, the souls go in," said Marcus, opening up the door and guiding himself. "Look, all these holes are for souls to enter, but here the program runs the reality, so things occur here fast. So we can therefore change the situation to create a desired effect." "So, how does this involve me exactly?" said Henry, still wondering why he was there. "Well, Henry, we think you might be interested to know that we have someone we think you'd like to meet," continued Marcus. "But first we want to give you a demonstration of what this thing is capable of, and how realistic it is." Judy Lynn sealed up the container and began to set the controls rigged up to the walls of the room of Henry's home world, Texel, in the Alpha system. "Here we go, Henry," Marcus said, as the lights within the long tube went out and flickered slightly, then revealed a similar location to Henry. It was old school Jelimenko High. Music lifted from the classrooms, and Henry instantly recognised it as a classic tune his mum and dad used to play when he was a small boy. "Ah, you recognise this place," said Marcus. "Yes, of course, it's my old school, but it seems dated, like it's years before I was there." "That's right, Henry." They entered the room through a half-open door where the music was playing and found two people in there who did not take any notice of them as they were too busy kissing. The two passed by. "They can't see or hear us," said Marcus. "This is just a test mode." "Oh, right." The couple went into the stationery store at the front of the room and could be seen through the glass-reinforced window that they were dressing and were about to have sex. "Who are they?" asked Henry. More importantly, is what date is it? He looked at the board and read the date. 8th Lunar 1790. That's 9 months before my birthday, said Henry, surprised that he was apparently living and breathing before he was supposed to be born. What's going on? It looks like you have just witnessed your own conception. Not many people can say that, Henry. I guess not. As they reached the end of the school's corridor, there was nowhere to turn. Instead, Marcus felt around as though he had done this hundreds of times and felt an invisible handle and opened a door which took them out again into the laboratory. What is this thing? Asked the confused Henry. As I told you, Henry, this is what we call the POD. We're going to use it to observe Earth when it is ready for humans to inhabit the place. And when we do, we want you to play an important role. What do you mean? Henry was now even more confused. Well, those people you saw in there are not the parents that you thought were yours. No, your mother had to give you up as she was still a schoolgirl when you were born. Your father, well, he knew nothing about you. So we did a bit of research and found that your real father later became a well-known notorious pirate. You're fiddling with me, right? I'm afraid not, Henry. Your father went on to be involved in the most audacious bank robbery known to us in this galaxy. You mean the one that happened recently? Yes, that one. Therefore, it can only be one of the 3 people. Henry was smarter than he made out. Correct, Henry. You're getting there. Well, which one is it? I mean, I know Captain Avery was involved. I met him, and there was Captain Phillips, who came into the Bracky bar that evening. I reported them into TCR. Well, I didn't see him clearly. That there was a third who I didn't see, though I believe he was a veteran of the sport. Well, Henry, I can take you to your real father now, if you would like. We have him here in suspended animation, as he is going to act as our first teacher or godlike figure on Earth. I see. So you want me to follow in my father's footsteps? Yes, that's right. Follow his lead and later take up where he left off. And then he will come back again, and you will do this until we feel Earth's population is ready to enter the realms of the galactic community. Wow, said Henry. That is quite an honour, I guess. Yes, it is a fast track to the High Council, replied Marcus. This is crazy. I mean, I'm just a normal guy from Radian who answered a wanted ad in the paper. Come on, Henry, Marcus said, taking the lead out of the box and into the maze of corridors. Judy Lynn, who had been observing the conversation, stayed behind to read the printed report of the pod test. Let's go and have a look at your father. Henry followed him, unable to think straight, and could quite not take in the shift that had just occurred in his life. Eventually, they reached a room where Captain Phillips was stored, and Marcus waved to 2 burly security guards standing at either side of the door as he and Henry passed through. In the room, Marcus led him over to the glass in front of the machine and saw for the first time the face of his real father. Ah, yes, it's Captain Phillips. I remember him now. Hello, Dad, you rogue, said Henry, with a weird sense of joy in his voice. Chapter 4.1 The Others. A voice in a darkened room said, Charles Vane? That is your name? Charles Vane repeated the human-like figure that was not all flesh, but wires and moving parts. Vane was lying on a bench with wires attached to his brain. A scientific crew gathered around, watching his progress. How did I get here, and what are you doing to me? Asked Vane, a little concerned at his new predicament and appearance. "Why have you brought me here? And who are you people anyway?" "We represent the force, the opposition force, what you may consider to be the other side, or what your history books would call the underworld. But we have plans, Charlie. Can I call you Charlie?" "I hate formality. Don't you, Charlie?" "Charlie's okay. What do you want from me anyhow?" "Well, we have others who are recruiting for a new mission to fight the council. You know, we like to outwit our foe, don't we, Jack?" he said, turning to his nearest associate to his right. "We sure do, Harold, we sure do," said Jack, nodding sarcastically. "You are going to love this, Charlie. I think it would be right up your street, as you would say to your fellow pirates," said Harold, ignoring Jack's sarcasm. What? I don't quite get this. What are you talking about?" "Charlie, we are sending you and 20 other men on a very special mission to a secret planet. We're going to take over their latest venture and make it our own. We are now in direct communication with them. We have the power to bring people's souls into this system and have our own council-style governance. Don't you see, Charlie? We are going up against them, and they don't even know it." "Well, if you could kindly explain to me what I am doing as a half-human and half-machine, I would be grateful." "Well, unfortunately, we have not yet perfected the implantation process, and there has not been enough research into producing limbs on a large scale at a required rate. Therefore, you and your brethren, you might say, have a limited amount of pure limbs. But we're working on it, and in a few years, our solar year, you understand, 476 days, we will have you all up and running. You get it, Frederick?" he said, turning left to talk to another co-worker. "Yes. Very funny, boss. I think your jokes are improving." "Ah, shut it, Fred. I will have you doing nights for the next 6 months. "Oh, sorry, boss. I know my place." "So what are we doing for?" asked Vane. "The Force, or just call us the Opposition. We like that. Or some of the fellows down the club just refer to us as OF. That is also fine." "What's the mission? Where are we off to?" "Ah, I can't tell you that yet," said Harold. "Are we going off soon? Are we to be held here until—" "When exactly are we going?" said a questioning Vane. "We are promoting all this at the moment. If you are not cooperative in this matter so far, we will terminate this contract, and you will be sent back to the sole depository in the Ultima galaxy, and nothing will be remembered about this. So, the only thing to ask you, Charlie, is, are you willing to work for the opposition?" Vane thought for a moment and then said, "Well, I really don't like the other system, and I was always getting into hot water with the authorities, so if you could reject all that places—" "That is correct, Charlie," said Harold, now smiling. "We are the opposition. Their rule, natural law, does not apply to us. We are not associated with them." "So where do you originate from?" he asked. "Well, that is a very clever question." Both Harold and Jack showed appropriate responses. "Let us just say that there was an agreement to disagree, and we decided to start our own style of doing things that you would probably recognise in your own universe," answered Jack. "The commercial arm, so you represent the Empire?" asked Vane. Harold continued the education. "Yes, that's right. We operate under the system in the universe and galaxy. We do not operate everywhere, only where a vacuum exists, where it is deemed necessary for us to exist. We are in enemy situations, but are here on agreement as such. But we do not intend to continue work under such restraints. We are not going to carry on with them, but we intend to take over wherever we can and impose our system of doing things. Do you understand that, Charlie? Do you see who we are and what we are doing? Oh, I think so. You're not as powerful as the council, but your aim is to be. Let's just say the new council? Well, sort of. We cannot hide into the Godhead thing. We have what you call dark glows around us. We do not wish to be close to the centre of the universe of light, and we wish to override the whole system. We'd bring it crashing down to the ground and reverse the polar shift, and have things working the other way. A reverse in the flow of soul energy? Is that what you're about? Yes, that is correct. We worship the dark energy. The darker we are, the more powerful in that scene. If we can turn all towards our system, then the centre, the council, lose power, and therefore a shift in energy will be performed. There are many who think we cannot do this, but they are weak, and we send them back to them. Do you think we can do this, Charlie? Well, I don't know. Your soul is already dark, Charlie, continued Harold. You have killed many times without reason. We, like you, could do well in our system. Very well. You think so? Yes, I think we have found a really dark star in you. Okay, said Charlie. You can convince me. I will work for you from now on. Will you give me proper legs and replace my non-natural parts with proper parts? Yes, of course. We're sending you off to a very special mission, but this will happen in slow time. Where are we going, Harold? Where is it you want us to go? Ah, that in secret. But what we want to do is no secret as such. We want you to infiltrate the council's plans at the outset. We want you to bring the population of our planet to our way of thinking. Bring them under influence by way of soul transfer. We want to interfere in the natural flow of souls to our side, away from the council, you see. Vane moved his metal arm and clicked his fingers together in a natural way. Most of the technicians around him blinked unnaturally. Sounds straightforward enough. When do you get going? Not for a while yet. We have to wait until the timing is right. We only have a very small window of opportunity to carry out our plan of taking hold of a system. But it will be such a hard-worked point that it will send the council into such a spin that, in that way, we will have the upper hand for the first time. We are planning a control system, but from other habitable systems, and have already begun new humanoid intelligence in nearby systems, which will reinforce our plans. This is going to be a wave of energy, Charlie, against those of light, and you're going to be one of our key players, Charlie. Chapter 4.2 Ultima Council Meeting. In the large boardroom of the council, there was the cold light of the ice planet Kojex, which gave an air of stiffness to the proceedings, with a round table with 9 members sat round it. A white light pulsated in the middle, transferring up to the ceiling and out to a transmitter that sent messages via staging points across the universe to call the council's influenced worlds. Altarian Council representative Anu opened the proceedings. The other 8 were representatives of the major civilizations that made up the council, these being Hoovid, Spectra, Ashan, Aragon, Ancor, Xenia, Zeemed, and Zenthroop. Ashan and Xenia were not in humanoid form normally, but for this occasion and for this environment they had taken on the form to communicate and function in the same way as others. Anu rubbed his hairless head and gained the other's attention. Representatives, thank you for coming at such short notice. It appears that we have created a problem for ourselves by allowing the Canis Major Galaxy unlimited technology. By doing so, they have threatened the frontiers of the Milky Way galaxy, which you know is being readied for our experimental choice planet experiment, which would ultimately be a place for higher energy forces. I therefore have been recommended by TCR to come up with a solution for their involvement and for the involvement of the rest of the universe. Xenia raised a blue paddle and proposed to speak next. So it is over to you to come up with some kind of solution to bring them back into line so they stop violating the rules of the universe. Xenia put her panel down and began her point. We are sure that these things are being capable of being, let's say, some sort of competition for us? I believe so, replied Anu. We can't allow them to carry out their next phase of expansion. They are a direct to the established forces within their neighbouring galaxies. We must act fast. Another paddle has gone up, this time from Hoover. I say we set them up as some sort of competitor to us. A sort of hub system. A third paddle this time, Ancor spoke. What we would call an underworld, an opposing force within the universe. What, in direct competition to us? Asked Xenia. No, not direct as such, just a balanced form. So we can grow through opposing them. Right, said Anu, who hadn't bothered with his paddle. And where exactly are we going to put these new others? Asked Xanthrop. Others. I like that. Our position may be more appropriate. Let's take a vote, said Anu. All in favour of others, raise your paddle. 5, including Anu, raised their paddles. That settles it then. We will call them others from now on. All right. Where shall we start them off? He continued. Paddles were raised from Ancor and Zine. And Zeemed asked, Can't we just finish them off and reinstate them somewhere else? Too risky, said Anu. How about we just let them to carry on with their infiltration into the Milky Way galaxy? When they return into the galaxy, it will be as our opposition, so to speak, pronounced Ancor. I suppose that would be less messy and time-consuming, said Anu. All seemed in agreement, but the paddles were raised another time, just to make sure. So then it was settled. The Canesians would be allowed to infiltrate the Milky Way and set up their own civilizations, and become the negative force within the universe. This experimental ground would be used to test the power of the Council, and allow the others access to all the known settlements via infiltration. I have just one more matter to raise on this subject, said Zenthroop. What about Earth? Are we going to allow them access to it? That we have not considered, as Earth is not yet the point for habitation. But in the future, we may find some use in others visiting the planet, said Anu. Could they be used to kickstart a humanoid culture there? Asked Hoover. That is something we would have to monitor and take special measures to see, and they don't try to hijack our plans for the choice planet Earth, said Anu. We can't take such a risk, said Ashan. All vote, said Anu. All those in favour of allowing the access to the Milky Way and to the realms of planet Earth, raise a paddle. 6 went up. That settles it then. Motion carried. All those who had voted against reluctantly pressed the globe lights affixed to their position and said 9 lights illuminated: orange, green, blue, purple, white, gold, yellow and red. Pulsated into the centre of the table to the vibrating light which filled with energy. It was drawn up and rose in a column to the ceiling and then shot like a fountain and travelled off in all directions across the universe to inform and to alter the rules that were imposed by the Council, before lifting the ban on the Canetians from entering the Milky Way galaxy. "One more matter to settle here," said Anu. "We need to organise a leader for them. Someone who can galvanise them and their power. Bring them to a collective. Make them into a potent force that appears as strong as we are. To tempt souls into their ranks, so to purify the existing souls, to allow them to grow. A process that would filter the bad for the good." "An anti-God figure?" said Zenthrope. "Possibly." "That would threaten our own existence, would it not?" asked Ashen. "Don't you think we could overcome an opposing force?" "Yes, of course," replied Ashen. "Then why the scepticism? We need a challenge. Societies need a challenge. We cannot allow civilizations just to stagnate into ether. What would you have us do in the future? They will need a leader." "Okay," said Aragon, "but I think it's too early for us to try and give them one. Why don't we set up a godhead, or should I say anti-godhead? We need them to believe that they must earn their leadership, so he takes them into their next level of wickedness." "This all sounds a bit too sinister to me," said Anchor. "What should we do once we feel that either way they have taken over too much of what we've established? Do we destroy them or congratulate them? I think this is very dangerous and could cause a serious problem for us in the future," said Aragon. "Look," Anu said, "we have to be able to have faith in our understanding of the universe and all that resides in it. By creating an opposing force with a strong leader means we are putting faith in the Creator, that we are the rightful rulers and force this is meant to perpetuate his universe. So God will determine the outcome of these things, and we must try hard to beat our opponents in this battle between positive and negative." Hoover asked. "Not positive and negative, but good and bad. We can't call them all bad. I have a bad day sometimes, but that does not make me bad." Aragon replied and continued. "Okay, a stronger word. If you take everything below the red energy field of the 9 chakra system, what do you get? A reflective downgrade into black from grey down. So we are effectively looking for someone that is of an animal state, a beast-like creature?" Ashen asked. "Well, not necessarily, but a leader that is blackened to the bottom of the scale. 7 steps down the scale to the blackest of stoles, yes." Chapter 4.3 Safety. New Horizon. Captain Avery gathered his senses after hyperspacing away from Toto. "What the hell was that place?" he said to himself. "I was only looking for Coffea, but I think I found something much, much darker. I'm going to have to call this in." Avery put his system into operation and called his findings to TCR. "Avery, calling TCR." A few seconds passed, and a young man's voice answered. "What is your position, Captain?" "New Horizon system." "That is an unmapped system, Captain. What is your purpose there?" I'm exploring, mapping the system for potential mineral wealth. Okay, on whose authority are you acting? Nobody's authority. I'm a speculative explorer. All right, Captain Avery. If you register your finds with the relevant authorities, you can continue. However, this system has no authority over it yet, so we will have to place a temporary council jurisdiction on the... What system was it? The New Horizon system, Avery said, with a bit of sarcasm in his voice. Yes, New Horizon is now officially under our control. What about Toto? Asked Avery, trying to get back to the point. Toto? Repeated the controller. Yes, Toto. Again, we have no authorities operating in that system. Well, there is someone there. That's not possible. We have no record of anyone ever going. I think you need to pass this on to a higher level, my friend. Captain Avery, we will investigate your claim and get back to you as soon as we have a validation of your claim. Yes, you do that. Captain Avery, signing out. Avery pulled up to view the level of the single sun of New Horizon and look into the view, accessing the potential planets or planet that could sustain life. Not another godforsaken place, I hope, he said, whilst checking his equipment, and then scanned for the life zone. The planets arched out in a sort of short chain, and one planet shone on his dash. A small but lush-looking planet. This looks promising. A lush green place. The right sort of place to find Coffea. Avery set its coordinates and linked into the gravity field and the onboard computers, adjusting to the various measures of pressures and rotating speed of the planet. He scanned the surface to see if anyone else was occupying the bright gem in the sea of darkness. Alert! Spacecraft of unknown origin indicated, said a soft female voice. Who else would be exploring the unknown world? Thought Avery. I thought the point of this would be to go to places that nobody would have thought of going. Well, let's take a look. Set incept course and break off and land outside of the craft. Avery set the ship to autopilot and out of annoyance made a cup of coffee. Down on the temperate surface of the planet, which felt cool, damp and fresh in a bright clear morning, the air was thick with the smell of wet vegetation and the smell of forest. Avery set his handheld tracker to the coordinates of the strange craft and began to move off. Large woodland trees created a shady walk across the small brooks towards his target. Avery looked back at his own spacecraft and glinted in the sunlight. Insects created a thick cloud around him and tried to feed off his salty sweat. He thought, why would anyone want to come to this wild frontier place? There's nothing here but flies, he said, hitting his neck after a yard-low blood-sucking fly drew new alien blood. Avery stumbled through the undergrowth, picking up leech-like creatures on his arms, which he burnt off with the glow of his laser gun's stun setting. He cursed and moved on. Avery could at last make out the outline of a strange, round-looking spacecraft, which wasn't like anything he'd ever seen before. Whatever is this? It's not local, that's for sure. Near to the odd-shaped spacecraft, which was round and disc-shaped, he could make out some dome-shaped structures, like growing nurseries he had seen on farms back on his homeworld. Inside one, he could see movement. Small, robot-like carts were moving material around to some sort of growing system. A figure appeared out of the strange light-looking ship via a ramp. Cloaked in a white robe, he checked on the robots in the dome and headed off into the forest with a glass-looking floating container floating behind him. What is this old bloke up to? Asked Avery. as he hid in the undergrowth nearby. The ramp was left down and Avery walked gingerly towards it. The robots were busy and did not appear to be of any intelligence. At the top of the ramp, Avery peered up to see if there was anyone else inside. No noise came from the gap. He called out, "Is there anyone there?" There was no reply. He looked around. Nothing moved apart from the robots going about their cultivation work. Avery moved up the ramp and walked inside the spacecraft. Natural light flooded into the ship from skylights. Plan of drawings of flora and fauna were spread out around the circular-shaped room. Small jars with earth and sprouting plant life were arranged on trays. "What is this old man doing?" Avery asked himself while scratching his head. Avery went outside and went over to the first plastic-style dome and pulled down the plastic-style panel door. 3 small tracked robots working inside stopped and looked round and then continued their work. Avery moved closer to one, but they efficiently ignored him until he picked the meter-high unit up. The tracks span around, stopped, reversed, and then tried to find traction 4s, but could not reverse again. This process continued whilst Avery read the manufacturer's details on the base plate. Manufactured by Council 9 Research and Development Division. There was no system information, not even a galaxy. This doesn't tell me much. This vessel could have come from anywhere in the universe. I'm just going to have to ask this white-robed guy when he returns. He returned the small unit back to the ground, and this time its trucks found traction and continued along its path and went about planting seedlings into the prepared earth. Another unit with a watering device followed the planting interest and delivered refreshing sparkled water to the newly planted specimens. Avery walked out of the first dome and entered the second. Inside he found larger units in a humanoid form growing larger plants. This time the unit stopped as a red and turned its head to Avery and telepathically messaged Avery. "I send you this message in your language. Do you understand me?" "Yes, I understand you. What are you doing here?" Avery replied. Chapter 4.4 The Others Attack. Charles Vane drained the bottom of his cup with a straw, and the black steaming coffee stung his mouth, which made him wince. His new arm ached as he stretched his shoulder to relieve the tension left by the replacement surgery. Vane was now whole and flying towards an habituated planet located in the Pleiades system. This was as far away from outposts of the Council, a blind spot on their radar, if you like. Vane's ship was followed by another 11 identical crafts. His Sky Vixen was high-tech. The others had done their homework, and every design in the galaxy had been exploited to produce what they determinedly thought to be the best fighter craft in existence. "This is Black 5, said Charles to his other pilots in formation. "We will attack the main population centre as marked on your maps. Land and then demand our planet surrender." The planet Paldan was an agricultural-based society, peaceful, possessed no conventional space defence force, but relied on its obscurity and the fact that the Council had jurisdiction over them, and therefore nobody would dare to attack, unless you were the others, which the Paladins knew nothing about until today. Inside the ruling palace of the Paladins Queen, Azrael sat with her council discussing what to do. A fleet of battlecraft in her system and reams of starfighters heading her way. We will have to surrender. We have no choice, said the Prime Minister. We will go down fighting, replied Azrael defiantly. There will be heavy casualties, ma'am, said her Minister for Defence. I will not have the history books say that Playden and Queen Azrael showed no resistance to an invading force. Has word been sent to the council? Yes, ma'am, said her closest adviser, Raja. We sent a message out about nothing yet. It will take hours before the message will get there. Even if it hasn't been intercepted and scrambled. Nothing can touch the council's lines, she snapped. OK, arm all men and women. We're going down fighting. I want no excuse. Nobody is leaving. We are all in this together. Until the last man or woman. Azrael picked up her cloak with her left hand and wrapped it around herself and walked out of their echoey chamber. The large wooden and metal framed doors creaked and noisily behind her. We're all going to die, said the Prime Minister after the low departure. Yes, I think you're right. I doubt this force will show much mercy, unless amused the Minister for Defence. What? Asked Raja. Unless we override our Queen? No, nobody will follow you there, replied Raja. I will, said the Equality Secretary. So would I, said the Health Minister. All 12 ministers chatted amongst themselves for a minute. 7 men and 5 women. The Prime Minister broke up the discussion. All in favour of resistance, put up your hand. 6 put up their hand, and 6 did not. All right, let's do this another way. All those in favour of barricading ourselves inside the palace and surrendering to the highest authority, raise your hands. This time, one of the former switched sides. 7. OK, motion carried. Raja interjected. He hadn't switched and was prepared to follow his queen to his death. He had in the past followed her into her bedchamber, but that was a long time ago. All those that wish to fight by the Queen's side, follow me. He got up. 3 others followed. Another one had dropped into the other camp, but he followed him out of the hall and down to the armoury, where the Queen was, busying herself with as much weaponry as she could carry. Where are the rest? Asked Raja, as he entered the small party. They refused to fight, ma'am. They would rather surrender. Well, let's see how much quarter they get for their efforts. Leave them. They will be dealt with, and history will remember them as black hearts. Yes, ma'am. Raja helped his queen onto her battle armour. He gave her raw weaponry to her, and with a heavy heart he helped himself to the armoury's best weapons and passed them around to the others. Bane was busy strafing the city with the other Sky Vixens. The city's defences were no match for such an advanced force. He almost felt sorry for the teeming masses of people firing their inadequate weaponry at him. Hand lasers and even conventional ballistic weaponry. The Vixens were far too well armoured to worry about himself about this. The Queen and her followers emerged from the palace and rushed towards the action. Bodies lay strewn about the market square, where just yesterday wares were being sold and all was peaceful. Come on, she urged them, firing wildly into the crafts in the sky. Ma'am, it's useless. Our weaponry, it seems, is so primitive compared to theirs. We just have no space fleet to protect us, says Raja. Nevertheless, we will fight until the end. I shall fight alongside my people. She raised her large weapon and fired it as the Vixen came in low strafing as it went. Her aim was good. All these years practising in the range that her late father insisted had paid off. The laser gun was 10 times more powerful than a standard weapon and made a considerable impact on the Vixen it hit. The craft lost control and began to spin uncontrollably, skimming the ground, lifting up vertically, turning 180 degrees and nosediving into the ground. A cheer went up from the decimated force that it was fighting against all odds. Baines saw the smoke rise up from the ground and ordered a withdrawal. Black 5 order, retreat back to the starships. They seem to have found some teeth. Let's get out of here. We cannot afford to lose any more ships. The strafing stopped, and slowly the ships formed up and went towards space. Well, that was easy, said the Queen. I don't think they were going to go away any time soon, said one of her junior ministers. Well, let's hope we have made them think twice about attacking us like that again. Do we have more weapons like yours, ma'am? Asked Raja desperately. No, this was a special one-off made for me by the manufacturers. It was an experiment. I got it from Papa for my 21st birthday. No, this is the only one. We cannot fight a whole army with one weapon, can we? Said Raja dejectedly. No, but I can make them face us in the field. I guess they are forming up an army as we speak, to land and take us that way. I guess so. They were right. The battle fleet landed and instructions were already acted upon. As landing craft with 100 troops in each slowly descended to the surface. They landed a good distance away, but the defending forces could see them in the far distance. Okay, said the Queen, surveying the situation. Gather all available men, able men and women. We are going to face these people. Whoever they are, head on. Raja rounded up every available commander and informed them of their intentions. This time it will be more even, said the Queen through gritted teeth.